Well, we've got some basic editing under our belt. And by basic, I mean you know how to slug clip after clip after clip into the timeline. Let's move on to some intermediate editing techniques. And the first one we're going to do is called an overwrite edit. And it should look familiar, and it's actually fairly self-explanatory. You simply can put down a clip and lay another clip at the end of it and cut off the tail of what you don't need. Let's go ahead and quickly assemble a clip onto the timeline. We're going to go with Abba talking long, and I already have an in point and an out point marked. It's me just generally saying the pizza's ready. Now, I learned that when you can smell the food, and then we actually have Vanessa taking the pizza out of the oven, and we're going to cut to a close-up. And I have all of the extra footage of me starting to cut it that we just don't need. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this down to the timeline by just dragging it and dropping it. And I'm going to hit the backslash key, and that's going to give me a little bit of extra space at the end of the timeline to throw my clip. So the key here is I want to replace the shot or overwrite the shot where the pizza actually hits the counter. So right there, it hits the counter, and that's a good edit point. I'm going to press the I button to mark an in point. That way it doesn't matter if I've nudged my playhead, because it will allow me to overwrite at that spot. Now we're going to cut to a close-up of the pizza landing on the counter, and that's simply called B-roll close-up pizza oven. Double-click to load that into the viewer. Once again, I have marked in and out points, but if those have changed on yours, I just want to cut to this right when it lands on the counter and I hear that clunk. So I'll mark an in point there. And again, I don't care about the out point because we're going to make a successive series of overwrite edits, and they'll just cut off all that extra fluff that I don't need. Now, I can drag this down to the timeline, and I want you to know when you drag to the timeline, it will put the clip wherever you let go of the mouse. It doesn't put it at the in point, it doesn't put it at the playhead. It kind of overrides that because it assumes you know where you want to drop the clip. However, you can snap to your in point or your playhead, and that's why that's useful when dragging. You can use a keyboard shortcut for this also, and the keyboard shortcut to do an overwrite edit is the period key, and I'll use that next time. So what we've done is we've placed the clip onto our timeline. We've kind of erased everything underneath. If I move this out of the way, nothing is there. Don't worry, it's all non-destructive. I could have stretched this back out if I wanted it. And I'm going to go ahead and hit undo a couple of times and take a look at how successful we were in placing this clip. I did that.
There you go. You totally did that.
And as you see, the timing is absolutely perfect. And sometimes that's by planning, and sometimes you're just lucky. Luck really helps out when you're editing. But everything afterwards has kind of been erased. So an overwrite edit is very useful to slug things down onto the timeline and still keep a rhythm going. I want to cut back to the wide shot, and we'll do one more overwrite edit just to make sure you have a good understanding of this editing strategy. So once the pizza has been put down and the oven is closed, we're ready to jump to the wide shot. I'll mark an in point by pressing the I key, jump back to the same shot that we had before. So I'm going to go ahead and double click on O1 Abba Talking to load that back into our source monitor and find a good place to cut in. Now, ideally, it's going to be after the pizza comes out of the oven. And I'm a little zoomed in here, so let me stretch this out so I can see more of my video. I could hit the minus key. Pizza comes out and lands. I sniff it, and I talk a little bit too much, and then she offers to let me cut it. This is also one of my favorite pizzas.
A nice little touch, huh?
Yeah, I like that.
So you want to cut it?
So I'll use the J key to step back a little bit. Like that. Mark an in point, and this time, instead of dragging it down, I could use one of these buttons for overwrite, or I'll just press the period key. And as you see, it replaces that clip and keeps going. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go ahead and delete this by selecting it and hitting the delete key because I know I don't need that extra footage.
You want to cut it and have a slice?
Yeah, sounds Now, good. That was pretty good. I'll probably finesse that edit a little bit to make the timing right. So there you see, an overwrite edit allows you to be more efficient in bringing your clips in And it allows me to cut out some extra areas of our raw video to shorten my final program.